Well, hi, this is the 21st session of the course for Tattum Reading. And what this is a reorganization of our comprehension and sight word program based on experience in the last couple of years. And it's actually simplified. So my goal will be to kind of package this whole thing so you'll have a good understanding of what we do with kids with just regular comprehension issues, where versus those who have nonverbal disabilities and have trouble picturing, and ESL kids. So it's a major presentation of organizing the whole thing. Okay, so let's begin. In the workshop, we talk about the comprehension cycle. So let me show that to you. The comprehension cycle is in researching 44 of the most important techniques for comprehension. These techniques I have included here include them. So this was meant to focus on the 7 to 9 most important techniques. Now, when we're doing fiction, we introduce what's called the wave: introduction, rising action, climax, conclusion. That's also called the elements of fiction. That's discussed in the workshop. We also, when we're talking about an essay, say that essays will often start with a topic sentence or a top bun, the lettuce, tomato, and mayonnaise, which are the supporting points, and the conclusion, which is the bottom bun. So main idea, topic sentence, supporting points, and conclusion at the bottom. It's the hamburger, our main idea, supporting points, conclusion. And then we build from that into a Whopper burger that has 2 backups for each of the supporting points. So this is talked about a little more when we talk about writing. But when we're in fiction, when we're in stories, especially in novels, we'll be introducing the introduction, rising action, climax, conclusion. Keep in mind, most of your stories rotate around around the conflict. And so that's going to be a key factor. Now, this goes for anything. When we're reading, if a child just spaces, just loses control or we have them connect and reread. In other words, when they break their connection in reading, you can tell that by they stare off in space, they lose their place. We just stop, because this is connection. We stop and say, let's reread. And I can show that with the signs. You broke your reading, let's reread. Okay, this is kind of showing reading. So we want to stay connected. We also want to be connecting our background to what we read. So that's what this kind of opening, these are kind of opening parts to it. No matter, and this goes to college reading. If a college student spaces in reading, he broke the connection, he needs to reconnect and reread. So that's just that basic. And a lot of kids, that's their issue. That's it. They comprehend well. They just are spacing or losing contact. Okay. Now, the core of it is we want to collect information, and we do it by making mental pictures and then doing paraphrasing. This is called paraphrase, predict. Picture, paraphrase, and then we get them to predict. That's kind of the core of our program for kids who have comprehension problems. So when I'm dealing with a child who can't understand a sentence or two, has trouble at that level, I get back to doing some picturing. Then I get them doing some paraphrasing and then prediction, P cubed. It's called P to the power of 3. Again, mentioned in the workshop. You can also call the picturing, you want a picture summary, versus paraphrase is a word summary and interpretation. So let us go to a book such as Ghost Ship. Okay. All right. All right, can you see the picture? So I would start with, what are you seeing, Steve? It's the 6 S's. What are you seeing? Well, I see a boat. I see a blue sky. I see a phantom. I see water. What are the shapes and sizes? That's the next 2 S's. What are shapes? Well, the water looks kind of a rectangle. We have kind of a almost like a razor blade shape in the clouds. And the boat, of course, looks like an old-fashioned boat shape. And the phantom's like a Halloween phantom. Okay, shades of color. So we have, what are we seeing? Size, shape, shades of color. Well, the boat's black, could be because it's night. This phantom appears to be gray and he has a sickle. All right, Steve, as you're pointing these things out, I want me to show you with my hands where they show you with your hands where they are. Okay, you have the ship, it's black. You had a phantom kind of in the back of the ship, and he's so kind of gray with a side. You got the blue sky and the blue water. Good. All right. So do you hear any sounds? Yeah, well, actually not much because the water isn't really moving. It's pretty quiet, so not much, maybe just slight waves. Any smells? Yeah, I smell seawater. Okay. So we went with, what did you see? The size, the shape, the sense of color. Then we went to the sounds and smell. And we don't get overly fanatic about it. It's just a guideline. Now, once he's done, again, when he tells me what he sees, I have him pointing with his hands to help tie it down. Then I'll say, okay, I want you to take a mental picture of that. And now tell me what you see. And use your hands. Oh, I see a sky. It's kind of razor blade. It's blue and black. I see black ship. Okay, I see a phantom with a scythe over here. I see blue water. Okay, good. Great. Now open your eyes. Anything you want to add? I think that's pretty much it. Okay, Steve, that's what you want to do when you read, is you want to try to form pictures when you read. Now, I want you from this to give me now a word summary or paraphrase of what's going on. Okay, so now I don't want a description. I want a word story. Well, there's a black ship, dark ship. It must be no sun out, very little sun, but a dark ship in the water with a phantom standing there, and he's not doing much. The ship seems like it's standing still. So not much is going on. Okay, good. Now I want you to predict, what do you think is going to happen next? Well, it's called Ghost Ship. So I think it may actually attack other ships, and this guy with the scythe doesn't look like a happy customer. So maybe they attack other ships, raid it, and take their money. Okay, that's a good prediction. Let's go into the story. Now, we can go into another picture. I have them turn their computer sideways for this picture, and have them describe this picture. If they have the book, it's real easy. But if they have a little laptop, I have them turn it sideways. And I might have them give the same thing here, and here they have to give suggested colors. So they might say, well, there's a ship coming into the bay. There's a port. The port's, or a dock, it's probably brown. The ship is maybe blackish with black sails. I see water, which might be a light blue. So they'll follow the PQ, but they have to add the color. So we may do this. Now, one of the purposes in doing this, especially with ESL, is to add vocabulary that's coming up in the book. Words like travel, river, problem. Now, with kids that don't have vocab problems, they're just not comprehending, we don't have to spend as much time with the vocab. But when you have a child who is ESL, I would do this picturing, but I'd be doing much more naming, and I would use the 4-step method we use for words. If you remember, the 4-step method for words that they have trouble with is they read the word, I then say it, they point to it, I give a definition, and then I randomly point. That's the 4-step method. Those are listed in concept 1 and 2 in the lessons book. So let's go back to this picture and look at it sideways. I would try to work in words like problem, written, trip, grab, shock. I try to work these words in as we're talking. So I would say, now what I have to do is label things more for the child. I would say, all right, here is a ship. There is a ship. Can you repeat that? Ship. There is a dock. What's that? A dock. There's men that are grabbing boxes. What are they? Grabbing boxes. There are men standing. It looks like a problem may occur. A problem because the ship may run into the dock. There's another small sailboat. It looks like this ship took a trip from point A to point B. So I use as much vocab as possible coming in the story. Then I'll say, point to the ship. Point to where the problem is. Well, the problem is the ship coming here. Point to the grab. Point to the dock. Point to the sailboat. And then I might go back and look for more words I want to add. Like, oh, this is filled with apples. Do you know what an apple is? So basically, I say the words. I make sure he knows the words. Then I say them. Now I give a definition. Point to the thing that sails in the water, ship. How about something he ties to, the dock? What's the barrel have in it? Apples. What's the man doing? Grabbing. What's that? A sailboat. And then I randomly point and he tells me what the words are. Now, this is an ESL variation where I'm loading on oral vocabulary. See, one of the problems we found with phonics series or phonics books is when they can read, but they don't understand anything they read because they don't work with the comprehension of the vocabulary. So what we do is we tie the vocabulary up front to the picture. And even if it's not there, we try to get a segue, like problem is a more of a concept. So I try to make sure I segue something for problem. I'm saying there's a presence. Well, I don't see a presence, but how I put it is, you remember on the cover, there was a phantom. Well, his presence must be here. That means where he's located must be back here. So you work in as much vocab as possible. So when you read the words, they make sense. Okay. So now we've introduced the picturing. So with the kids that have just picturing problems, we've done the picturing, then close your eyes, describe the picture, paraphrase, predict. Whereas with the vocab people, we spent much more time on vocab with the 4-step method. And we then can have them give a little summary of what's happening, what they predict. And then we go into reading. Now, when they're reading, we will pause and I'll ask them, what do you see? What's your picture you make in your mind? Well, nothing. Well, let's go back. It's New Orleans. Do you remember what that dock looked like? Form a picture. Well, let's go back and look. So I try to get them to form pictures. Then, all right, give me a word summary. What do you predict? And we will do that in small chunks and get increasingly larger chunks. And this is for the severe comprehension. So we have the PQ, picture, paraphrase, predict, for the kid who just has comprehension issues, but not vocab. We just quickly move through that. Whereas the ESL, we spend a lot of time with oral vocabulary, so the story makes sense. Okay. All right. So that's, I call the remedial, that's the remedial approach, PQ. And then that's taken out of the skills approach, which I will go back to. Okay, so here's the skills approach. So we talk, before we go into a story, we will talk about the wave. When we have some bigger comprehension problems, we will do, before the book, we'll do the wave and add to it as we go. For any kid, if they lose attention or break connection, we have them quick reread. So we've talked about these two go hand in hand, picture, word summary, and then prediction. Now, if we have a child who doesn't have picturing problems, but just comprehension, we'll start by having these two, getting them to make a quick picture and word summary, and then we'll add these two together, prediction and inference. And basically, prediction, inference, and drawing conclusions are all inferencing. Inference is in a line. He put the pliers in his pocket and went to school. Well, what are you inferring about the pliers? Well, you know what? His girlfriend's desk was shaky. I bet he's going to try to fix it. Oh, that's a good inference. Drawing conclusions is inference between paragraphs. You're drawing conclusions. It's a bigger inference. Prediction is an inference in the future. You're inferring. All of these need to be based on facts. You don't predict like, okay, Martians are going to attack. Well, where's it talk about Martians or ships? So the inference here, all three are inferences. Okay. Then we talk about the W's as a way of summarizing where you're at. Main idea is also a way of it. And then we talk about the highest level of reading, which is where you're evaluating. But Marian Wolf talks about, to her, the highest form of reading is where you get into the feelings of the character and the perspective taking. Jean Chall, in her wonderful book in the 60s, pointed out that that's the highest level of reading. Feelings and perspective takings, where you're getting to another's view. So the basis is picture and word summary, and then we have the three forms of inference and main idea. And main idea support, evaluation. And then these are really also inferences, because I have to infer about the kids' feelings. I can't tell, and I have to infer about people's perspectives. So there's really 5 different ways of inferring. That you're going to see in my summary mode I'm going to get into in a moment. Now, so the case study is my way of doing this in a more friendly way. It's a kid-friendly way. However, if the child is having trouble with components of the case study, you can go and do 2 at a time like we do here. And how that works is I introduce one through movements, like prediction. On the video, I show prediction. I introduce it. I show the ball, crystal ball, that in prediction you're looking ahead. And then I model prediction a couple times. And then we alternate reading where I model prediction and then he does it. And I modeled he prediction. Okay. I would also then teach inferencing. I would again show that the arrow means you're going to an area. The movement is this. You're inferring in an area that you're not sure of. It's kind of an educated guess. And the arrow kind of means that we have to go into our mind to get it. And again, this is infer. Here's what the author says. Here's what I'm inferring. This is on the video. And then I model. So I will read a few sections and infer, and then we will alternate. Okay. That's the remedial approach for these. Okay. Now, let's repackage this. So P-cubed is a really meaty remedial program. This is the most basic components that all good comprehenders use. So I've taken this and repackaged it into a user-friendly method. And these are pretty much all included, except this. This is just something that connect and reread is something that is pre-reading. Anytime a kid breaks pre-comprehension, you can't comprehend. So I've repackaged this into a case study, yet you can go back and work the process indicated here in the videos for remedial purposes. Okay, so let's now go to what I call our standard comprehension program. This is kind of where we'd start unless a kid had severe problems. If he had severe problems with an area, we'd go work with it in partners of 2, like we do here, and do a lot of alternate modeling. Okay, so let me get out of this. Let me go to the case study. Okay. So my thought was, let's make this kind of easier for kids. And part of my thinking was this: studies indicate that kids don't use the comprehension skills given them. They don't apply them independently. So I thought, what could I give that would make things easier, something that they may use. So that's where I came up with the idea of this, a detective story. And we have a case study. We're solving a mystery. And pretty much all stories have some sort of mystery or conflict in them. And we're solving that. So the case study starts with the case. Who or what, who, what, where, and when. So who's doing something or what's doing it, what's happening, where, and when. That's the case. And I'll begin. What's our beginning case? Okay, well, we have Dr. Elf, George, and John. They're reading a newspaper. It's in the summer, and they are in Montana. Great. I will be prompting them to try and make a movie as they're reading, but the student case does that more in depth. I'll be prompting to go follow the cues in the student case, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Okay, so I will also point out the case can enlarge. You might get more people. You might get different locations. So the case can enlarge. But right now you have the case. Who, what, where, when. So now we're reading. They've got it. If they got a good idea of the case, they then give me the gist, which is kind of taking this and organizing it into a main idea. The gist is like the main idea. Somebody or something did something because. We're now moving into why. Somebody or something did something because, which is the why. So I will introduce the gist and I will model it. I'll have the child read to me and I'll model it. Then I'll read to them and they'll model it. Then they'll read to me and I'll model it and we alternate. This is for the comprehension problem child. For phonics children, start 1 to 4, I use it as a basis of discussion every page or two, but I don't have to do it regularly because many of our phonics kids, comprehension, if they're a 7th grader, is at 7th grade and their reading's at 2nd. So I don't have to do a lot of comprehension. I got to get their phonics up to their comprehension, okay? But where the kid's comprehension, his phonics is here, but he's comprehending here, or his reading's here and he's comprehending here, I have to alternate with the child, me modeling a paragraph, then the child modeling, okay? So the gist. Now keep in mind, once we're in why, we're getting into inference. So the teacher can prompt things with why questions. He can model an inference question, which is at the sentence level. Why did Tom rip up the note or kick the door? And then the child will do an inference. The teacher can model drawing conclusions, which is inferencing across paragraphs. What conclusion or inference can you make or draw as to why Susan feels inadequate? What can you conclude about her friends? That's again inferencing. And prediction, you can get her to infer about the future. These are all, so I tend to call all 3 of these inferencing. So when I'm at the gist, I'm now moving abstract to the why. Here, I'm very concrete. Who, what, where, when. Here, we're moving abstract. Studies indicate the #1 problem of upper level readers, middle school, high school, is inferencing and the why. They'll get the literal, but they can't get this. So again, the way you do this is if you're modeling inference, I have the child read to me and I inference, then I read to them and I ask them and we go back and forth. It's a really fun tutorial. So again, let's look up here at the starts. This tells you what starts 1 through 4 usually don't have to do it regularly, whereas start 5 does, has to do it. We alternate paragraphs. And then I talk about severe problems, P cubed and QuAR. I'll get to QuAR in a little bit. Okay, so now we're in the gist. So we can read a little bit and I can ask, can you tell me the gist now? Somebody does Neil largest, and suddenly there's effect. Somebody, hit somebody with a paddle and he fell in the water and he's struggling. That's an effect, and we're moving into the conflict gist. So I'll say, okay, somebody or something did something because, and what effects are we seeing? So I'm moving in here. Oh, this kid got knocked in the water and he's screaming. Okay. What other effects? Well, the police came. Good. What other effects? Tom was arrested. What problems result? he's going to go to jail unless he can figure out a way or convince his friend not to prosecute him. All right, so we've got now the problem. We're getting the conflict gist. So now we'll read a little further and I'll say, give me a little more of the conflict gist. And they will. And then eventually we have the solution of the conflict, okay? So these three parts, I can at any point, once the child understands this, I can say, well, the gist is enlarged. Give me the gist now. We're now in the conflict. Give me the conflict now. Let's go back to the case. So we have these three things that I can come back to that really cover all the components of the comprehension cycle. Now, when I'm at the conflict, I mentioned teacher may use the term conflict or problem in discussing this third dimension. Some of my teachers felt problem was better for younger kids. The problem gist, okay? It's up to you. You are into the conflict once effects and problems developed. This is, we now have students infer characters, feelings, and perspectives. So we come back to, okay, well, now let's infer. We know that we've had all these problems and things. How do you think Tom feels about that problem? How do you think Susie does? What's Bob's perspective who saw it? So once we're in the conflict, we can get into these kinds of support questions. Okay. All right. So this is the teachers. The teacher uses this at the guideline. So when I'm at the gist, if I'm a start 1 to 4, it says occasionally ask a why question. When I'm at a start 5, alternate saying the gist or hypothesis question. By that, I mean a start 5, I'm assuming that start 5 has a comprehension issue. Okay. So this is the teacher's guideline. Now I'm going to show you the student's version. Now, before I go to the student's version, I want to just review real quick QuAR, question, answer, response. That can be used at any point with younger kids. I use it really very much connected to P cubed. Once a child gives a little summary and once we're like at a page, I'll say, okay, I'll ask a their question. And that's where you can put your finger on it. Okay, who are we dealing with? What is it dealing? Where did it happen? Notice that their questions are really the case. Then I'll ask a question that's in 2 places. Okay, that's called a look and search question. Okay, what was the weather like? Well, initially it was nice, then a hurricane occurred. How did Susie feel? Well, she was sad until they went out for ice cream. Then she felt good. So that's look and search. So I put 2 fingers by the eyes. And then on your own is all the inferencing questions. On your own is all these and all these about feelings and care. And that's what upper readers have trouble with that have comprehension, is inferencing. So in summary, P cubed with QuAR is our basic remedial program. The comprehension cycle are the skills needed to be a good comprehender. And I've repackaged them here with hopes that they're more child friendly so that the child will use them when we're done. Okay. So now let's look at the student version. Okay. Now the student version this is what the student has in front of them. So we point out the gist is the main idea of the story. The solution is a complete summary of the story. Wait a minute. Okay. All right. That should be the conflict is a complete. I'll need to make a change. You initially called it solution gist. Okay. All right. So the child has the case in front of them. So as they're reading, I'll look and I'll say, okay, give me the case. And he's got this. who or what's involved, what did she or he do, where did this occur, when did it occur? So they have that right in front of them. Then this is a guideline for them. And I might say, well, let's look over this. Are you making a movie? The case may enlarge as you read. Look at the cover and pictures to help with the location and characters. Place a friend or actor in the story to make your movie of the story. So when you have somebody who looks like a friend of yours or an actor, put them in. That'll help. If there's a setting you've been to and it talks about a beach, put your beach in. In other words, take your background and add it. So this is the child's guideline while they're reading. Once we're in the gist, somebody or something did something because, this is theirs. Give me the best guess as to what will happen next. Best guess has how the two characters feel about this event. Ask a why question at the end of each page, then give your best guess. Now, a why question is where they come up with the inferencing question and give an answer, okay? So then we have these guidelines. The gist statement addresses the conflict of the story, which is the heart of the case or story. Ask why about the case and answer it improves retention. 15%. Asking the why and answering improves comprehension by 15%, the same as picturing. There may be more gist statements during the course of the event. So this is information for the kid. Now we're at the conflict. What were the effects of this action? What problems resulted? How was the problem solved? How did the characters feel about the situation that occurred? Okay. So this is what the child follows, and I have my version. So when we're here, I can ask some questions out of my version. When we're here in the red, I can ask some questions out of the teacher version. There's more why questions there. When I'm here, I can ask some questions out of the conflict. Okay. All right. All right, I'm going to pause for a moment before I move on for questions for 5 minutes, and then we're going to move on.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
All right. I think maybe you said it, but I just want to clarify. So the p cubed, and is this in addition to the p cubed, or are they completely separate things?
Completely different.
Okay.
If I have a child who can handle this level and I'm a p cubed, that's all I'm doing. I'm doing that with QuAR. So I'm getting him going to the covers and pictures. I'm having him describe the picture using the 6 S's, what he sees, using his hands, see this size, the shape, sense of color, sound, smell, closing his eyes, doing it, then paraphrasing, predicting, and then occasionally doing QuAR.
Okay.
I asked
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Their question, look and search on your own. That's the full program. This case study is for a child that has regular comprehension issues, not severe, and it's meant to be a user-friendly thing that they may carry with them. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, I have one student who I'm really thinking of with this, but she's ESL, but she also is special ed, and she reads fairly well, but anything you ask her, she just stares at you and will not produce an answer. I mean, like, you practically have to give it to her. So the p cubed is probably where I need to.
No, that's where she would be, because we start getting it out of her in the picture. So you're going to ask her the kind of pictures or kind of questions you would ask in the story with the picture beforehand. Okay. So that the questions make sense to her. And if does she understand the vocabulary?
Not particularly.
Then
so I'd have to do the vocabulary building.
You're going to do the variation, the 4-step variation with the picture, where you're giving the vocab coming up in the story, then you're saying it, she points to it. You're given a definition, she finds it, and then you randomly point. You're going to be doing that to help. The combination of those two should really pull it together. Other questions? If not, I'm going to move on. I'm going to review this, and then I'm going to go to sight word approach, because that came up. Okay, in summary, Tattum Reading has kind of 2 approaches to comprehension. It has the severe approach, or the more in-depth approach, for children who just aren't understanding much of anything. And that's PQ, picture, paraphrase, predict. And we'll always start with a picture or a couple before we read. And we'll do the S's. What do you see? What's this? What are you seeing? And they use their hands to show when they do, I see this. And they tell you the size, the shape, the sense of colors, and then any sounds or smells. And they close their eyes, give it back to you. And then I have them paraphrase from the picture and predict. Put in your own words, what do you think is going to happen, and predict. And then occasionally we'll do the QuAR. There, look and search on your own. That's kind of the basic. That's our remedial. Now, the comprehension cycle is kind of our hitting the 7 to 9 major elements that research supports. Depends who you read, but we're hitting all the major elements, and they come in 2 pairs. Okay. What I have done is made it user-friendly through the case study. They're embedded in there. But if they're having trouble with that embed, you can go back to the cycle and do 2 at a time. And when you do that approach, if you use the hand signals that are in the video, like if you're doing prediction, I'll show the sign for prediction. I'll show the picture of the crystal ball. And then I'll model like for 3 times prediction, and then we'll alternate. They'll read to me, I'll do it, I read to them. And then I'll show inference. Inference is also kind of a prediction. I'm inferring, this is what the author's saying, I'm adding to that. The sign is a little arrow going down. And then I do it like 3 times, and then we'll alternate. And then if that's their only problem, I can get back into the case study, or I can continue with the cycle. The cycle's built into the case study, it's just more user-friendly. Case study, I have my version out in the kids. I'm trying to get the kids to follow theirs so that in the future, they may be thinking about, all right, the case, the gist, the conflict. If I can get them to think those 3 elements, we're in good shape. Okay. All right. Now we're going to switch up in terms of sight word, which came up last time. Okay. So the sight word, I use orthographic mapping, but I'm trying to make it more consistent with Zoom because that's where most of our tutors are. So I've made some modifications as usual. So let's go to hold on here. You can take a 1-minute stretch break while I'm getting this squared away. Okay. Now, let's go into sight word. First, a comment on it. We don't overly worry about sight word development for our start 1s, 2s, and beginning 3s because their fusiform gyrus is not functioning. Whoops. I think I lost. Okay. So back part of the brain right here, the fusiform gyrus, is not firing. So that gets remediated by them sounding out words from Broca's area, firing Wernicke's area, these 2, and then that stimulates the fusiform gyrus. And that can take months. Once it happens, the kids just pick up sight words regularly. When it doesn't happen, they sound out the same word several times. So I will do key sight words. And I've kind of pulled out the most important sight words for reading. And we'll do those. We'll have 2 or 3 of those going at a time. And I approach it in a much less ritual way than the spelling sight words. So the reading sight words are in my Tattum sight word test, the first 2 columns. And then we go to the 150 words in the lessons book. Now, the reason I do that is I took out the real sight words for the Tattum sight word test that are pure sight words, not phonetic words. And then we go back to the 150 word test by Shaywitz because those are the words they have to have automatic and fast. So we're now working on speed. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay. So this is what I'm dealing with here. This is the Tattum sight word test. And we have 3 columns. This is for like a higher student. If I want to check their sight words out, like 4th grade, 5th grade. If a kid aces column 2, I would check this out. But this is for your higher students. We'll normally test kindergartner first, this row. Okay. Now let's say, as the case that we've had with a student, they read this is 2 in here, and they have trouble. They read you, and they have trouble with come and was. Okay. So I'll put those where they can't see it. And well, first I will color it. Well, I'll put it where they can't see it. And I'll say, let's tap out come. Come. Okay, good. Now let's look at come. What's the hard parts of that word? And they might say, well, this oh, shouldn't it be I? And I don't hear this here. So you got, these are the hard parts. Come and come. Okay. All right. So it doesn't look at all like it's spelled. So what is the word come? All right. You know these words so far. Let's read what you got. To, here, you, come. What's the hard part? The O and the E. Okay. Now let's try was. Let's tap it out. Was. W. Z. Again. W. Z. Let's check it. W plays fair. How about that doesn't make any sense. It's A, right? And S can say Z, but it's not its best bet. So these may be the 2 areas that are problematic. Was. Okay, so read that word was. What's the tough part? AS, good. The A and this, that's the tough part here was. What was the tough part here? Well, this O and E. Okay, if they don't know the letter names, we'll have them do the sounds. This one, this letter, and this letter are the hard part. Good. Now let's read the ones you have. To, here, you, come, was. Great. So the next day, I will go ahead and we'll start and we'll read, and then I'll time them. Beat the clock. If they only have 5, I'll time them on 5. We'll read it once and we'll try to beat that. And then once they get that down well, I'll introduce 2 or 3 more. Same way. R. Put it aside. R. How many taps? 1. Well, let's look at it. Well, here's the R. This doesn't make any sense here, or this doesn't make sense here. Right. So we have a couple added letters. So what doesn't play fair? They could say the A and the E, or this letter and that letter. Good. What didn't play fair here? These 2. What didn't play fair here? Good. Now let's read the words. To, here, you, come, was, are. Okay. So our goal is to get these new words in sight word as soon as possible. And then before you read, just time them and do beat the clock. And we add, once you're done with column 2 or column 1, you want to time them in column 1. Okay. And it'd be nice to get them to do a word a second, 20 seconds. That would be incredible if we can get them. I've had kids do that in less than that. Then we'd go to column 2 and start adding. So they have column 1. So we may, before reading, quick time them on that and then start adding words to come from column 2. Once we finish column 2, we now can go to Shaywitz's, or to my book, and do Shaywitz's list, the 150 words. They've done column 2, and guess what? Most of the real sight words they now know. See, the 150 most frequent words has phonetic words. The, of, and is phonetic. A, to, in is phonetic. Is, you, that is phonetic. It. So we're now just making the sight words, which they know, and the phonetic words faster. And I'll be timing them for columns. And again, my goal is 20 seconds if I can get them going on a column. So I might time them on a couple columns before I go, or a column a day, whatever we need to do. And then we'll introduce a few more. But already, if you do the first 2 columns of my sight word test, you've already hit about 40 of the real sight words in this list. Let me pause here for questions. If any, if not, I'll keep moving.
I had just one. You do both the columns, then you come back to this, or was the
No.
first column?
Both columns.
Both columns, okay.
That's about 40 words out of the one. What I did is I went through the 150 and took out the pure phonetic words. I mean, the pure sight words, and put them in these two lists. And then once you're done, they're now back embedded here. So the other words are phonetic words. So if your phonetics are good, you should be able to whip through this. Does that make sense, Pam? Okay, so the Tattum sight word test, we take that list of words, we start working through it, and then we go, notice I'm only doing 2 components of orthographic mapping. I am having them tap out without seeing the word. We then look at the word and go through it, sound at a time, and look at what doesn't play fair. In other words, what is irregular. And then I constantly will review what doesn't play fair as I review some of the words. Okay. All right, now let's go to spelling. Okay, now in the spelling, we just follow the spelling words and the concepts, okay? So I took the high frequency spelling words and added them at the bottom of the concepts. So notice the first ones for concept 1, they're called rest words because they're not the best. These are the best. These are the rest. Is A, that's the first one. A, well, that's usually not a problem. R, as I noted, is a problem, and the. So now to make this, rather than on Zoom, in order to make this more user friendly, I will tend to enlarge this. Well, first, I will hide it and I'll say, all right, we did R, let's try something different. Let's go to was, that's a great one. Let's say they know to do and they don't know was for spelling, okay. I'll say, all right, we're gonna tap out was. Everybody with me, ready, was. What, z. Great, again, what, z. Now let's look at the word. You see it? Was. Now let's look at it, and we're gonna kind of go through it and look at what's kind of strange about what what's the hard part here? Well, here, yeah, that doesn't play fair. Okay, now, so we have these parts. You want to spell it with a UZ, so that's it. So I want you now to draw 3 lines on a whiteboard or a sheet of paper or something. Let's go ahead and draw a line for each sound. Are you ready? So the child will be going, I'll show this in a minute. Now I want you to copy this and say the sounds as you go. Are you ready? Write on the lines. Z. Now I want you to cover it, look at it, cover it, and write it again and check to see if you got it right. Then check. Now here's where variation can occur. Once they copy it, first, did they copy it correct? If not, we then go letter at a time. But once they copy it, you can have them look and write it next and then do it from memory. Or you can just have them cover it and do it from memory. It depends on the kid's memory abilities. Because the general rule for practice is this: trace, copy, cover. Trace, copy, cover. So if you want to give seat work at a classroom, like in a classroom, you may not have time to do this. But one thing you can do time is give kids sight words where they trace it, they then copy it, and then they cover and do it from memory. And that can either be done one time each or 3 times. A severe kid, you might trace it 3 times saying was, and then they'll copy it, was, and then cover, or just one each. But the basic approach to get it in is this orthographic mapping. So let me go ahead and do this. Let me take a new word. Let's do they and said. Let's do both of these. Okay. So first I'm going to hide it and I say, all right, your next spelling word is they. Let's tap it out. Everyone with me? They. A. A. Okay. Good. Now let's look at it. Now let's do it with me. Ready? A. A. What doesn't play fair? Well, it does, but this doesn't. Yeah, this is the hard part. Okay. All right. I want you to look at that and I want you to draw 2 lines for the 2 taps. A. All right. Go ahead and copy. Now the A. Check. Good. You've got it. Now cover and do it from memory. Again, I might say copy it again before cover and do it from memory. That's going to be up to the kid. I then would include the words I've taught as part of my spelling. All right, let's finish up with said. Again, I'd hide, say our new spelling word is said. Let's tap it out. Said. How many taps? 3. Good. Now let's look at the word. Said. D. Yeah, this is the part that you're having trouble with. What should it be? And by the way, if it's a logical thing, I'll ask them what should be there. And they might say an That's right. That's why that's hard. Okay. Ed. All right, let's go ahead and draw lines and say the sounds as you're doing it. D. All right, above the first line, go ahead and copy. What is it? Now the next line, notice it's got 2 letters on the next. D. Check. Whoop. We had a little trouble with this. Let's go ahead next to it and draw 3 more lines. Let's go ahead, start with this. Good, now this, and now this, d. Good, great. Now we had a little trouble, so I want you to copy it next to it. You got that one correct, good. All right, when you feel you have it, cover and do it from memory. And it's now included. Okay, so what I've just presented is kind of a synthesis of what I've come up with the orthographic technique, orthographic mapping for reading, which is simple, and spelling, which is a little more complex. In spelling, I am following the words in this, which I chose based on frequency and, like these are words kids need to know. Now, if your child's older and he has a good sight word memory, I will do a cut to the chase approach, which we're doing with a couple kids from Canada right now. I think one kid from Canada whose word form area is firing. Okay, so what I have done here is I've taken the sight words. Can you see the sight word, this thing here? Okay. I've taken the sight words and loaded them into sentences. So with kids who have a good word form area, I will have them copy this sentence and then write it from memory until they can do it. Write it and check it, write it and check it. We'll first go through why they don't play fair. Could, this OU, you climb, you don't hear the B, any, so I'll go through the sentence and what doesn't play fair. Then I'll have them copy it. And then I have them cover, copy, and practice it. This is great for 4th, 5th grade classes. We've used this as a class approach. Then on Friday, they write this sentence. And then we add another one. We add a sentence a week. And so we always have them write what they know. But we'll go through it first as to would. Well, it's an OU lazy dog word. Okay, that's right. It's an OU lazy dog word. OULD. This doesn't This is not your best bet for ooh. Board, you don't hear the A. Buy, you don't hear the U. For islands, the S is silent. That's why it's hard. Good. All right, you ready? This is the one where you're going to copy. They'll copy it, saying the words, and then practice it till they have it from memory. So we've done this in a class where we put the sentence on the board. We talk about it. Kids copy it, do it. And when they got it from memory, when they're ready to be tested, they raise their hand and we walk around and check their test. That means they've done it from memory. So this is for a kid whose word form area is firing, folks. He's got sight word abilities, but just doesn't know the words. Okay, so let's close with questions on either the orthographic mapping or on the comprehension.
I had a question about when you say do it from memory. Do you mean like the spelling from memory or memorizing the sentence itself? Like, is the teacher dictating the sentence?
Yeah, here's what's happening. We'll have the sentence on the board and we'll talk about what doesn't play fair. If I'm doing it with a class or with a student, that's step one. Step two, we'll then have them copy it. Actually, what we usually do is pass a piece of paper with it written on so they don't have to copy from the board. But if I'm on Zoom, I would just show them the sentence and have them copy it. Okay. So then they'll copy it and then they practice it. Well, I say, I want you to write it till you're ready to write it from memory. When you're ready to write, give me a thumbs up or a hand, and then I'll check it. So I'll get a thumb up, I'll go over and check. And usually the kids nail it. So the next day I'll say, practice it again. Do you think you have it? When you think you have it now, just give me a thumbs up and then I'll check. And we'll do it that way for practice. Does that make sense, April? So we talk about what doesn't play fair. We then have them copy it and then correct. But this is loaded with some top sight words, hard sight words for 2nd through 4th graders. And that approach gets it all in a chunk. That's for kids with a good word form area. Jen, what do you think about anything?
I have a question.
All right, hold on just for a second. I think I lost Jen.
I'm here.
Okay, what do you think? Any questions or thoughts?
I really like the sight word sentences myself. I think that's a great thing to add to just a regular old word spelling test if you have to give them.
Isn't that great? Yeah.
I do. I really think it's.
If their word form area is firing, it's good. Yeah. Who has the question?
Oh, me. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Wendy, I'm sorry, when you were talking about sight words, which was a question I had last week, I was driving and I was just trying to listen to you while I was driving, but I was bits and pieces. So I first of all, the sight word test, is that in the manual? Because I don't remember seeing that. I have this sheet, the sight word sentences, and I have Shewitz one, but I don't have that sight word test. Is it?
Steve Hegler, where is that located? If he's here. Because Steve stepped out.
Oh, okay. Well,
Not-
so you first use that to.
I'll tell you what, Wendy, email
Yeah.
Steve and ask him for a copy, okay?
Okay.
And he'll
Okay.
get it to you. All right, question 2.
Yeah. So you are first having the students read from that list, depending on whatever start they are at.
Yeah, this for reading sight words, I'll start from the first 2 columns of that are the sight words taken out of what Dr. Shewitz says every kid should know automatically, these 150 words. I took the pure sight words out, so we learn those first, and then we go and start timing with the 150 list.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
right. And you can also watch this again. Steve will have this up on our website. Okay.
Oh, yeah, great. And then, are you doing anything else with the, like putting it in a student notebook or anything, or just?
Well, we addressed that last week, but next week we'll be open for questions. We can do that.
Okay, great.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions before we close?
I have a question, just to clarify, when it comes to comprehension, you're advocating that we should use the P cube for the very severe children with comprehension challenges. After they master that, then move forward to
No.
the case study.
Yeah, in other words, if they do well on P cubed and the QuAR, which is really, this is a kid who's can't even tell you who or what, you know, so I'm trying to get them, all right, let's, from the picture, you see that who, let's give them, you know, I'm trying to tie the picture to the concrete basis, or the ESL kid who doesn't know vocab. So we're getting that going, and he's now comprehending, he can answer QuAR questions. We can then see, because the very opening of the case study is who, what, where, when, which are all basic concrete concepts addressed in PQ. And then we are now stretching them with the why question, the because question.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. Will you be redoing the P cube?
What? It's, I just did it. So it's on the, you can get this on our website.
Really? Okay, great, awesome, thank you.
Sure. Okay. All right. Now, before we end, is there anything that you feel we need clarification on about today?